We actually just, because we haven't thought, we don't use it much anymore. And I can let the mayor know they're not doing it. Yeah. Mayor, the scout troop isn't able to make it. The Tom and Sam. No, they're able to, they just fail. Oh, yeah. Your classic one is. Oh, yeah. I guess that chart. So do you have nobody here? With that. So we have a link to it. We don't know much anymore, but there's nobody to ask. We have a thought, but if somebody wants to do a prayer, we can do a prayer. Okay. Okay. Perfect.
I need all prayer.
Mayor, why don't you just write me down for the flag? Get that name on it.
Are you a little PJ?
Can I get a t-shirt?
Yeah,
can I go grab?
Yeah, go grab a t-shirt right now.
Oh, Canada?
We have a very healthy stream. You don't want to overhear that. Yeah, that's a healthy stream.
Well, go enjoy your last.
This is it. Oh, man, what should I do? Watch my son?
I was just going to say, what do you normally do with this? Because I was doing this because I thought that you were going home.
That is what I'm doing. I'm going to pick him up at BYU and then at this point I'm taking this because that's the one I'm actually having to say that.
They call in, get their story.
What's so funny?
I've literally talked to you about it. So,
my best friend, my wife's grandfather came up to me right when our son was born. You know, after I changed the name. I feel bad. 100%. I did. Yeah. This is a replacement. And again, how we're covered. And you could just bring it. You just had to bring home the bacon, care, all that was expected in the summer.
We'll do a list of, I don't want to ever brand it as carers are doing the care. They will help you for sure. But yeah, it should be pretty good.
It's under that.
Your turn. Your night.
Neighborhood reservation.
Yeah. So that's the idea. This person will be specifically working with distressed neighbors and will qualify for CDD funding and help facilitate.
My turn is late.
Yeah, catch up. Good for you.
There's that one guy you said already.
That's kind of like yeah. I think it's different for
No,
you got an iPhone too?
I've got an iPhone.
Okay, you're going to be on Harvard. So and I'm happy by peace.
Yeah, I just don't like the laptop.
I make grandpa at some point, but I'm not to the rescue.
But then,
yeah, I don't need to tell you.
my wife for sure teaches at BYU, and so this is their last night.
So you're up. It's going to be your show tonight.
And everyone's telling me, half the audience has told me,
Half the audience.
the amount of time you have to sit here is all on my shoulders.
Well, nobody's.
Yeah, well, you know.
There's not a lot of.
You guys are busy.
Well, actually, the calendar on the website I was looking at, it shows the council meeting is next week.
Oh, yeah.
That get changed.
Okay, let's make this quick and easy. If it's not, I'm
Good thing you sent me notice, huh? Good thing.
Your last one should be.
I think it's only fair. And I'm sure the state, on the state where you
well, enjoy your night off.
Yeah. So I'm going to just make sure everything, just because we started, we let them straight. With our own.
Hey, Pete, did you know that So on the calendar, it shows next week
As the meeting? Oh, no, I didn't.
because I wasn't sure, you know, because we had it last week, so I went to look to see.
Yeah, I wonder if some people are going to show up next week.
Maybe.
He's in stall number 2. Let me go knock. No, I'm just kidding. I'll go find him.
Normally have scouts to the budget.
Yeah, there would be people who would come and, you know.
No, it's just scout.
At this
No,
point,
that's,
it's personal.
you're probably right. I mean, the crowd is probably, I mean, that's probably a direct
I didn't bring candy bars.
result of it being wrong on the calendar.
It could be.
Maybe people are busy. I mean, it is graduation week.
Yeah, that's true. So.
It's graduation over
BYU.
Yeah, so maybe they're busy.
Let's hope that's it.
Do you know anything about their advice?
maybe it's Wednesday, but anyways, the final on Friday. Goes to next week.
How to change the sound cards?
We've got new chairs up there.
Oh, they did.
Rolling chairs. I guess the other ones were rolling too. They're just big.
And they were like, it was easy. So you'll be good.
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I got the application.
I'm looking at something.
But it's
If we're done before 8,
Yeah, if this goes past it's on.
Steve, did you check the personal appearance of the law?
up is the USB.
I can check. Yeah, there's nobody there. I thought that might be the case.
No problem.
Let me read off the phone. Then I'll call you if we saw it.
So I was thinking, it's usually on the,
If nobody's
Pete, how many YouTube viewers do we have?
just one.
That's one fewer than you would have had I'm in here.
That's right. Our most consistent listener, our viewer, is not watching tonight. Do you think he's okay?
I don't know where it'll be out.
I hope nothing bad's happened to him.
We'll know after tonight.
Nobody's listening to it.
Just a second.
I half the audience.
Testing. Hello. You're all by yourself over there, Jamie. The extras, or is this your song? Or? No. I love it. I had
That's what I always been told and remember, so I said, just
every conversation. Seems like every new thing.
that's what I want to use.
What were the issues on the tennis courts? I don't even.
Well,
That's
I
got to
mean,
go back.
we own it.
Weren't they doing working program last week?
I do not know you had access to it. Yeah.
What do you think of this? Meeting. I was hoping that the technology was there.
Just like the baseball.
And what I was thinking is if there was any way they could have
Notice they were sure eager to put up signs and fences out there. See, I'm not even know if that has to be excited.
But
Saturday.
what frustrates me is they don't have a correlation between going on series.
Exactly. No, good set. Those are obviously.
Well, I got there. Our delegate couldn't. It's okay. You also have to get the
Rob's trying calling. I got this. Third? What's that recorder? Still negotiate.
I'm trying to look at Scrabble.
Yeah, I thought it was Rob. But you got kicked out on the front.
Hold us to the same standard.
Yeah.
We'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome everyone to our city council meeting this evening. We would like to start out with a prayer by Debbie Leray and a pledge of allegiance by Steve Downs. Yeah.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity you have to come this evening to discuss the budget and other pertinent city information. We're grateful for those who serve and those who are in the city, and we appreciate their service. We're grateful for this country that we live in and the opportunities it affords us to be free and to make wise choices. And we ask these favors and blessings in thy holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, will the audience please rise? And citizens, please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Yeah.
You bring your bugle.
Thank you, Debbie and Steve. We have no minutes to approve this evening, so we'll go on to the upcoming events. We have the NIA Sunset Heights East Neighborhood Picnic at noon on April the 21st. On April the 25th through the 27th, we have the mid-year conference for the Utah League of Cities and Towns in St. George. On April the 26th, we have the Imagine Orem meeting at the Frontrunner Station, 3 to 5 p.m. On April the 30th, we have the UVU Baseball Orem City Night at 6 p.m. On May the 1st, we have the Miss Orem Organization mock interviews at the Council Chambers at 7 p.m. On May the 3rd, we have the City of Orem Geneva Road area-wide plan at 6 p.m. at the Orem Public Works Building. On May the 19th, we have the Miss Orem Scholarship Pageant at 7 p.m. at the Sears Center for the Arts. On May the 28th, we have the Memorial Day program, City of Orem Cemetery, at 9 a.m. On June the 4th through the 9th, we have our Summer Fest for 2018. And June the 16th, we have Ride with the Mayor, Cruise with the Council at 8:30 a.m. at Timpanogos Park. I don't believe that we have anybody scheduled for personal appearance time, so we will dispense with that. We have no consent items, so we will go into our regular scheduled items, the first one being a resolution tentatively adopting the City of Orem fiscal year 2018-19 tentative budget, and Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson are our presenters, and we'll turn the time over to them. I would like to mention also that Brent Sumner is unavailable for this evening and unavailable to call in, and we look forward to having him back at our next City Council session. We'll turn the time over to Richard.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Since we have such a large crowd here tonight, you have had every bit of this presented to you prior to this. And this is fulfilling a requirement that we present it to you. You hold a public hearing. Actually, you don't have to hold a public hearing on this one, but we have. And then by resolution, it's accepted. and then we move on to any changes you'd want to make down the road, and then accept it in May, or final adoption in May. So, with that being said, how much of this do you want? Do you want a very abbreviated version since you've all had it? Do you want to ask questions? I put it back on you.
I would say an abbreviated version.
Okay.
Sam, do you have a question?
I just had a question. What format do we get this out to the public in? I'm sure it's something that we share on the city's website. Is it something that we publish on our social media channels? Obviously, we don't have a lot of citizens here to participate tonight, but certainly there would be some of our citizens who would like to have something to say about some of these issues. What channels can we use to make that more accessible to those who might not be able to attend tonight?
You know, the document itself is made available, and then from there we have, you know, since using social media is relatively new, that could be a way people could give us some feedback on it. And then, you know, traditionally it's all aimed towards the old style public hearing that occurs on final adoption. But if someone comes in and says, hey, I want 10,000 for my favorite project, at that point it's a little late. And so it's a lot, if we could get input in this time frame, that's really the best time.
So the time frame we're talking about is adopting the final budget with a public hearing on May 22, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Yes.
So if we adopt this tentative budget, and then we have basically a month until we adopt the final budget.
Correct. Correct. So this is the city's largest budget ever, 117 million, and it's grown fairly quickly. But the highlights of it, we have no tax increases, and we have a fair amount where we're focusing on, when you had your retreat, you had these issues to focus on, and we will be doing a fair amount of paying attention to that. And there's a lot of capital in this. So the revenues are 97 million, or excuse me, 96 million, almost 97. And transfers going back and forth, an additional almost $18 million. And that's where you see the big growth coming up. And then, if you recall, a few years ago when you adopted the master plans to pay-as-you-go, we pointed out we will be accumulating a lot of cash, and you'll be appropriating reserves, and you're starting to see more and more of that as we move on through here.
Richard, if I may.
Yes.
Go ahead.
There are two types of reserves. There are the reserves for future capital expenditures and reserves that are a rainy day fund, if you will. There are likely other kind of reserves. You're primarily talking about the capital reserve tonight, right? Exactly. And our rainy day reserve, as we take care of our fiscal needs, have a little rainy day reserve in addition.
Yeah, this is money set aside for capital projects.
That's what you're discussing right now, but we will also discuss the reserve of the budget itself tonight, an estimate of where we're at, right?
Hadn't planned on it.
Okay.
But we can.
Okay, I would like to hear that.
Okay.
Sorry, can you go back one slide again? Just one question. The major increase between FY17 and FY18, I mean, you got a $8 million increase. What was the general source of that major increase? Is that mostly retail sales tax that were?
It would be, this is looking at the entire budget, so it would be a combination of sales tax grew, water.
Is that where we started seeing the water rate increases?
Storm. Okay. That's where the bulk of the changes are. And on the general fund side, the one that's really growing, well, a couple. Building, those we don't count them in as we budget, but show them up. They show up later on, and the sales tax is very strong. Okay, looking at all of the funds, here you can see, and the prior discussion, we're at 3.1 on revenues for road. If the monies came in before, you see how much that would benefit us. That would almost double our revenues that we have available. The care tax, as you watch that growing from year to year, that's perfect measure of how businesses are doing in Orem, because that's only Orem sales tax, and no one else gets any little pieces of it. As you look across there, you can see water reclamation, stormwater, they're growing quite a bit on that. Okay, just looking at the general fund itself, again at the macro level, you can see the growth from fiscal 16 to fiscal 19, about a $5 million growth. Again, primarily sales tax is doing wonderfully well, and the building is still very strong. The other revenues. What's interesting, about 20% of the general fund's income is from fees that we charge. Here's a quick overview. The bulk of the general fund revenue still comes from the three main taxes. But then the other charges that we have bring in a fair amount. The charges for services is, again, to me, is kind of surprisingly high.
So, Richard, do you have any feel for where other cities are at, specifically Lehigh, for their charges for services compared to us, percentage-wise?
No.
Okay.
What types of services would those be that you're?
It's about anything we offer. Gosh, help me out here. I'm drawing a blank.
Is that the building permit kind of services, or is it more?
Fingerprinting.
Passport?
Passports.
Anything police?
Yeah, someone pays us
Justice
fee
court
or an individual.
Say what? Yes, ambulance would be in there. That's close to $2 million of that.
Yeah, ambulance would be the single largest.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything like that, yeah. All the recreation charges would be in there. Not the pool, but all of the programs.
Those would come in through to the general fund as opposed to the recreation?
Well, the ones that are outdoor programs.
Playing
tennis,
baseball,
volleyball, softball, all of those.
Okay. Everyone cares a lot about how we stack up against other cities, and we put this in every year. Stormwater, with the proposed increase, we would move above the average there. But as you can see, other than franchise tax, you have to put an average there. They're all 6. Everybody charges 6. The key one I look at is the water. The average city is 61, and we make sure everything is being measured apples to apples. We're at 45, and this is with our proposed and their existing rates.
Tom has a question.
Yes.
That's at 28,000 gallons of water per month.
On average.
Okay, so is that what the average? I use high and low. This takes into account our tiered watering system.
It would be billing on a tiered basis, but
whether other cities do or not, we're still below that average. Thank you.
We take their rates and as if they were here.
Thank you.
And this is including what our fees are for this budget.
With our proposed,
because our
usually versus their existing fees.
Right, because our water is going up basically 10% this year.
So you can see where there are any questions here. Okay. Overall, 38% of the city is for personnel, operations 43%. That would look very differently if we didn't have public works and particularly water. That makes a big difference on that. And capital, 18% is a big change for us. It's a significant increase. As we go here, this is the expenditures. The numbers come out the same per fund. Something I want to point out. You look at the water expenditures, 36% of their total expenditures is for capital. For water reclamation, it's 41%. For storm, it's 45%. Now, 5 years ago, water spending this year 10 times more. Water rec 9 times more, storm 5 times more than they were. So that's the difference that the master plans and the commitment to funding them on a pay-as-you-go is making. Okay, every department has a stewardship over here, and we will cover, as you go top to bottom. Public Works has the biggest stewardship, 40% of the entire pie. Non-departmental, that is things where if we're socking money away for something, Utopia is socked in there. Things that there isn't really a nice tie, and it belongs to more of a general thing, or we want to keep it away from a particular department as we're saving for something. That's where we...
Debbie has a question for you.
I want to go back to the water rates. I know when we first approved the tiered rates, we said maybe we would come and look at them again and make sure the gallon usage, and I don't know if anyone's taken a look at, are they at the right levels? Are this... I got a few pushback from some of my neighbors that their bills went way up, and I said, well, this is about conservation and da. But have we looked at that? Has Neil, have you had a chance, Neil, to look and see, are these levels still right? Do we need to up or...
You're saying the thresholds for
the threshold? I mean the thresholds for
tier 1 and 2.
Tier 1 and 2 especially.
We haven't reanalyzed them. We haven't looked through a full year of the summer yet, but all indications point that we are right. I mean, we're higher than every other city out there as far as our allocations go, and lower than them on rates as well. But for us specifically, we looked at it, and we feel like these allocations and rates fit appropriately.
Okay, are we going to look at that after we've had a year of data? Is that the plan?
Yeah, we're going to look at it. We want to get our smart meters moved forward and have that data available on a more consistent basis, so we don't have reads outside of 30-day windows, and that we can actually analyze from a more scientific approach than a thumb approach. But certainly we'll look at those rates every year.
Okay, thanks.
Jamie, you have
I just wanted to reemphasize, I think what Neil was suggesting was the tier structure we've set up is far more generous than any other community that we compare ourselves to or look to. So if we were to adjust, we would actually become even more generous than we already are. And we already don't have a peer. If we were to become more generous, we would be separating ourselves even more from any of our peers. And so I think that the focus is to just kind of see how we are and maybe to maintain our separation between where our peers are rather than continuing to distance ourselves from our peers, if that makes sense.
Well, in all due respect, my neighbors don't care what the people around us are paying. They want to know about their water bill. So I'm just asking that we make sure we look at it and analyze it and make sure that it's still a fair and reasonable thing.
And I would represent to you that we do that, and there are ways to reduce the cost of those charges, but the council decision has been to move forward on a pay-as-you-go basis.
Okay.
And as such, that requires maintaining certain fees. If you wanted to, for example, spread the cost of infrastructure across 30 years and finance that infrastructure, I could almost guarantee that those rates would be lower.
Councilor McDonald?
I would just add to what Mr. Davison said. We determined we didn't want to keep kicking that can down the road for future generations to pay. We've been using the benefit of previous generations, putting these lines in, and we have a duty to get them back to some standard. And that's what this fee is for. And we're still, if they can't afford water here, they can't afford water anywhere. So this is our duty for future generations to leave it as well as we got it 20 years ago, and we didn't do that. So this is our payback time.
So one other thing that we could do, and in a newsletter, I think we've done it before, but we could do it again, is to let people know about Central Utah Water, that they can go over there and they can get a controller for their water for their lawns at 50% off, and they will show them how to water their lawns properly. What I find is that most people don't necessarily know how to water their lawns properly and overwater. And that's a great way to save money, to be honest with you. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, next up, the council focus areas: Utopia, city facilities, neighborhood preservation, traffic management. Now, in the meeting we all just got out of, we discussed Utopia and what the plan forward would be. And, the first step was that survey. So, unless you have questions for each other, I have nothing more than that. The next area.
One thing I was just going to say, I believe that neighborhood preservation is something that's on the minds of a lot of the citizens, and I think that's very important. I think all 4 of these are important areas to cover, and I'm glad that they're part of our focus. So,
okay, the next area is looking at city facilities. Here's a mock-up of what we think City Hall could be like. Could be built as soon as 2375. But coming up with a plan of how to, handle the communities, the buildings that the city has in this. Next up, we have to maintain what we have. A key component in this year's budget, and the most noticeable, is going to be wayfinding. And we thought we would paint all our hallways to just get you where you need to go, because all of us every day help someone who's lost in this building or this campus. But it's very important to not always be looking at the next best thing. Take care of what you have, and this budget puts a lot of money into that. We have additional custodial help is put into the budget as we're trying to get it right-sized, the type of, what the crew needs to be to do the work in the timely manner, so they're not getting in the way of other people. So a quick summary, any questions on what's in there dealing with facilities? Okay, keeping neighborhood preservation. Number one thing in neighborhood preservation, if any survey would say, is do you feel safe? There's a fire, okay, Gurney, help me the right word, engine? Okay, a fire engine is included in this. To me, they're all trucks. But fire engine is included. There are 2 police officers. One is a combination NPU, be NPU in the summertime, school resource officer in the school year. So,
Richard, one thing that I think would be important to note, not to say too much, but we do cover the responsibilities for fire protection for the city of Vineyard, who pays us for that service. And we also do the same for Linden, who pays us for that service. So it's important that our equipment is up to date, in good condition, because we cover a lot of communities.
Yes, good point. Second officer is the cyber crimes officer. This position will be a part of a newly formed cyber crimes task force that the FBI will be leading, and they will just look at computer crime. Part of it will be a community services manager that will be running the CDBG program. We'll also have some assistance on the CARE program. Going back to, you got to take care of what you have. Our parks, as Quinn Monson was saying, people choose to live where they live for specific reasons, and you'd have to think people are here and happy they're here because of the whole mix of the amenities and keeping our parks in good shape, tennis courts for those that like it. Playgrounds, I have been astounded year-round how busy this playground is that's here. And we're looking to up the ante, if you will, on the other playground replacements to give them a little unique spin, take a little bit of pressure off of this one, and have people so they can go to other playgrounds. Pool maintenance, it's now time to start, taking care of replastering the pool, taking care of the slides. They're nearing the end of their useful life. Cemetery, we want you on both ends. We have hospitals to bring you into life, a cemetery as you go out. There's going to be people have wanted to be buried more and more on Saturdays than they ever have in the past. Adding a new full-time employee up there.
You mean the person who died or the relative?
I think the relatives.
Okay.
Yeah. The people that are up there, the residents, have never made one complaint ever about anything. But their families may be a little bit harder to please. But this will allow better service 6 days a week. So, again, something that makes the community nice to be in. The stage out here in the park, they've struggled with having a good professional sound. Bringing in someone that's trained for the concerts that will add to what that experience is like. And the one thing that everyone seems to have loved are the Christmas lights, expanding that a little bit in the coming year. Part of keeping neighborhood preservation is the State Street Corridor Plan, which, you know, as there has to be some sort of change in as people want to build and to live in apartment type settings, bring those more along this big corridor of State Street, and that's part of the plan there. So that, keep going with that. And an item of yours was to redo the neighborhoods in action and bring that up so it works more for today and into the future than it has been. Okay, so any questions on this one? Okay, next one is
I'm sorry.
I know that we, as far as the police, we a few years ago we lost several. Have we? Maybe this is a question for the Chief Giles. Are we up to the levels where we were? Maybe it was post-recession. In my mind, we lost 8 officers, and we were ramping up 2 or 3 a year. Are we up to the same level of service that we had?
Chief, do you want to answer that?
Ben, I could come up with an answer to that. You could just repeat. We were actually talking about CDBG and neighborhood preservation back there.
Oh.
Well, and so I missed the first part of it.
If my memory correct, we were down 8 officers a few years ago, and maybe it's not 8, but we were trying to revamp up to what our staffing levels were.
I guess it depends on where "were" means. We actually stayed level for quite a while. We had, I don't know if it sounds like to you guys like it sounds to me on this microphone, but we had, I believe, 88 officers back in 2008, and then the financial hard times hit. We're back to 87 right now.
Okay, so we're almost up to what we were.
Yeah, we are, and that doesn't count the additional 2 that are on this. You know, population growth obviously is a little bit quicker than that, but we're almost back to the 2008 level.
Okay.
So, and just on that note, with the population growth, do you know how that's impacted the number of officers per 1,000 residents?
I do.
Okay.
In 2008 we had 1.04. And you've asked a question that I've actually been working on over the last few months, but 1.04 officers per 1,000 in 2005, 6, and 7. We went down a little bit in 8, and then I don't know the exact numbers of officers for several years in the middle there. We actually didn't have the exact total, so I'm still looking for those. But right now we have 0.88 officers per 1,000.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Anything else?
Nope. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, next one is address traffic management. Traffic management is also much broader. It's every form of moving from point A to point B. The Center Street Corridor Plan, as was discussed last week, is a part of the budget. There's going to be an increased data collection efforts that we're funding to. Before you know what to do, you have to know where the hot spots are. Specifically, we're looking at some crosswalk improvements. It's on 2000 North in Maine, headed over to, there's 2 areas to Oak Canyon, working on some crosswalks there. Then Mighty Light Corporation is split by 4th North, and they've asked for some help, and this will be a joint project with them to do something to make it a little bit easier for them to get across the road. It's not so bad when it's a person walking. It's different when it's a forklift. And then installation of traffic medians will begin again. I should say they've been in, they've been out, they've been in, they've been out on State Street over the life, and they'll be starting to come back in. As was expressed last week, they will go where the need is greatest and start, then filter out from there. And there will be some right-of-way acquisition on 16th North will begin. But the biggest part of transportation management is keeping the roads good. Single best thing we can do is just have good, smooth roads, and we have continual effort in that direction. Any questions on the traffic management side?
One thing I've noticed about roads is if you're not staying with it, then you get behind, and it's tough to catch up.
Yes, and if you don't stay with it, you reach a point of really no return. If you stay with it, you can minimize over the long haul your cost of maintaining a specific segment of road. If you don't, ultimately you pay a lot more. It's the old Fram oil filter commercial, if you recall. And I think everyone here is old enough to remember those. Pay me now or pay me later. And the price difference is very large. Okay, there's a lot of other things working on communication, both to the public and internally, trying to speed things up and make it easier to work. The 311 Help Center down the hallway, adding a new agent and going to create a lead there. Poke your head in there. We have a new counter space. I'm not sure it's completely operable yet, but it's there. In City Manager's Office, Economic Development, a new programmer downstairs. Going with a new engineer and a new way of subscribing to software. Other things in police, probably the bigger one here, the in-car camera system, and we'll probably be going with a third party for the bailiffs. And new dispatcher and filling. Right now we have an officer in a sergeant's position and make them an officer. Assistant librarian there, and for the first time in a number of years, increasing the actual collections budget. Public Works, a little job change for them, and bringing on an intern. Fleet that we talked about in a lot greater detail. Keeping on top of that is, again, a part of being able to perform the jobs. Debt service, don't need as much money. We're retiring some bonds. In recreation, they're kind of holding steady. We've kind of capped it at the amount of money that we're transferring in. And we think their revenues will probably go up. We just learned in the past week that the Pass of All Passes, which has drawn a lot of people away, is not going to be sold. So we expect we'll have some more people coming in. Community development, again, it goes on. It's looking like a little bit better year than in the past. Water, we have their revenues are going up considerably. They're using some money that's been accumulated in prior years for capital in this coming year. This is where it's going. These are the highlights in water. As you can tell, the majority of these are capital. And things that we've talked about, they're all in the master plan, and starting with the AMI, which would get us back to the point where we can tell, are the rates doing what we thought they would do? But AMI is really important to have that in first because of the fluctuation in days between reads. This is the proposed change in water. The only
Councilmember Lenz has a question.
Yes, sir.
If you go back one slide, and I know this is how it's been mapped out on the plan, but I'm just wondering the AMI, we're only doing part of the city now, and we're kind of stashing some of those funds away for the storage tank. Would there be cost savings by, instead of stashing that storage tank money now, using some of that to accelerate the AMI, and then using more of those funds next year for the storage tank?
Mr. Neal?
Chief set precedent for us to answer.
We got plenty of chairs up front, by the way.
Church.
So the question is, should we spend money now on AMI, or should we wait and save for the tank and try and use some of those savings?
Instead of stashing 4.3 away, and I think is that the first tranche of money for the storage tank?
Yes, it is.
3 years. So instead of doing 4.3 this year for the storage tank, could we take a chunk of that to accelerate the AMI this year and stash the money that we would have spent next year on AMI, for example, on that?
So there's a couple of reasons why we've done what we've done. The first is initially AMI wasn't planned to start until next year, not even this year. We found a way to use some existing dollars that we had to begin the AMI implementation starting in FY18 and FY19 utilizing reserves. So those are not actually in the master plan rates. Those are coming from reserves. The master plan did recommend spending down reserves and not carrying those over, and that's why we were using those dollars. The reason we are recommending AMI be implemented over a course of time is twofold. One, for staffing purposes in just getting all those meters in the ground and getting all the customer service inquiries answered. Putting 22,000 devices in people's hands and having that influx of data immediately is going to be overwhelming to our IT group, to servers, to our customer service side. Secondly, when we go to replace these in 20 years, instead of having them all reach their 20-year age in one given year, we will then have another 4 or 5 years to implement them. So that is one reason for the extended deployment. We are currently working, and we will bring forth to you next council meeting probably a resolution to adopt a WaterSmart grant that we're applying for through the federal government Bureau of Reclamation, and for $1 million to help us supplement that. We've also been in discussions with Central Utah Water Conservancy District for a grant or a cooperative effort to receive monies from them as well. So we are looking to accelerate it, but if you'll recall, when we initially did our studies to determine the efficiency of our meters, we came in right around 93%. So there is a 7% delta there that you're talking about capturing. We expected it to be a little bigger than that because most are. We found that we are actually overcharging and undercharging equally to the point where we are in that range where we expected to be lower and have more of a revenue gap. So our meters are worn out, we know that, but that's the reason why we are approaching this in the way that we are. We certainly could, after year one deployment, which I'm considering this year, look at those funds that are set aside for the tank, and then next year look at that. We are currently looking at the implementation of the tower system. And once we get the tower system up and running, we'll be able to put those meters in and assess how that's going for the first round. And then I think that's an excellent thing to look at for next year in determining if we should do that or not. But maybe we wait until next year to do that.
So we don't try to run before we can walk, essentially, and get some experience with that. One question I had on that note, if we're building out certain neighborhoods where we have that data over the winter, for example, where neighborhoods on older traditional meters, we can't read those meters until the springtime, would we be updating those neighborhoods with AMI to newer billing policies where we would bill them for actual usage over the winter? Or would we wait until the whole city has AMI before we and switch over all at one time?
My suggestion would be to bill them through the winter for actual usage. And then for those with the existing meters, because we have that availability. And then the way we do it now, we average the usage and then back bill them in April for that. But because we have it available, I would suggest to do what we can with those that have it.
And then, Richard, is your department, I guess, ready to do that neighborhood by neighborhood where some will be billed for actual, whereas the rest will still have that, low bill during the winter and then the spike, the first reading in the spring?
As long as the building software can handle it, which I'm sure it'll be made to do it, it's no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Spencer has a question.
Yes, I have a question. On the water rates for the the yearly pay or whatever you pay by
the budget billing.
Yeah.
So
where are we at on that?
We have 5 people in the city, 5 families in the city currently utilizing it. We found a glitch in rolling it out, and I'm 20% of the sample. Mm-hmm. And my wife called me right up and said, "Why do we have a late fee?" And just there was a programming issue.
Okay.
That's been fixed, and it's we can go now. We feel that we got the few people have been under it for a few months. and we will address that down the road about what it'll be. So it's coming.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to just sit here.
Okay. Okay, water reclamation. As you can see, the revenue is going up over time. They've gone from 8.8 to 11.6. This is what their budget is aiming to accomplish. Again, it's very heavily weighted towards the capital side, along with keeping everything else going. If you look the third bullet point from the bottom, the H2S rehabilitation project, something that's got to be an ongoing issue, you know, some focus of that fund to keep, because we have some hills in the city, to keep our sewer lines intact.
So, Richard, what is the second one up? Providing funds to research water quality in Utah Lake. Is that comparing what that water quality is in regards to us putting nutrients in there, or what is the purpose for that?
The city is part of a group known as the Wasatch Front Water Quality Coalition. We are a group of water reclamation facility cities and districts that have pooled money together, and together we have about $1 million that we allocate strictly for research. The group has been in place. It was originally in place entitled the Jordan River Farmington Bay Water Quality Coalition. And after that study was complete by the state, they invited Provo, Orem, Temp, and all of the surrounding cities to also join, and we renamed it the Wasatch Front Water Quality Coalition. And we use that money to perform research projects on the lake and the Jordan River to present science for what is needed to reduce harmful algal blooms and treat the water in our plants so that it's not harmful for the lake or the surrounding water bodies.
So do you work with the Utah Lake Commission then?
Yes, the Utah Lake Commission, in cooperation with, attends those meetings. They are actually not a funding member of that particular group, but Eric does attend those meetings, and we collaborate efforts. The Utah Lake Commission does not do specific studies for water quality.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this? Here's the proposed rate change, base rate from 932 to 1072, and then the second door in multi-unit would be 972, from 832 to 972, and a usage change of $1.85 per thousand to $2.18. And again, this is in keeping up with the master plan recommendations. Stormwater, there's, again, revenues are going up, and they're dedicating a significant amount to capital. A lot of their attention has been changed over to the West Union Canal, which speeding that up in the master plan and having to juggle things. But as they explained earlier, they're not going to change the amount they'll be spending, just the order that things come in on that. Any other questions dealing with stormwater? This is, showing the brief what they're looking at with it. Okay. Rate change from 675 to 710. And then solid waste, big change there. We'll skip right over to the rates. 1085 to 1115, so a small change. That's just based upon what our costs are to dispose of it, since it's all contractual. And you can see the other changes there. If you skip down the bottom, the last one, a combined first can recycle rate would be 1440, which is what the two are. But anyone who comes in setting up an account, they would have to have those two once this is put into place. So all new customers will be recycling customers at the same time. And frankly, I've yet to ever meet a customer that once they had recycling didn't wish they had more on that. Questions? Now, as we've looked at the rates, looking at our basic usage, it looks like about a $8.91 change on your average account. For those who are on the budget billing, we would increase whatever their rate is by $360 a month to cover the base rates, because the usage is entirely up to them, and we don't want to get guessing there. But we'll make the changes on their base. Okay, other fees and charges. The big one is with business licensing going to disproportionate services. This is what they would pay plus $85 is going to be the annual renewal. It's currently $100, drop it to $85, and depending upon where they fall, what type of business they are. Now, the real big one is hospital. There are two of them, and that's big. That is 10% of what they could be charged. Another big one is convenience stores. And again, as you saw, that's where the demand is. So we're dropping the per employee rate, $85 to renew, plus whatever category you fit in. You know what it is. Year in, year out. You know what that is. And it doesn't matter if you have one employee or 10,000 employees. If you're in the same business, you pay the same rate. And so, any questions? Okay. The other one, we have some who will be charged per unit or per room if they're lodging, storage units, assisted living.
Richard, how are we defining small versus large for the assisted living facilities?
It's on the number of units. And the top of my head, I don't recall what the breakdown is. I want to say it's like 2023.
Okay.
Is the break point.
Do most of our facilities fall under one category or the other?
They all fall in a category.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Are most of them large facilities or most of them small facilities?
It was kind of evenly split. I think there's a little bit more that are small. Okay, that's the end of the main part of the budget. Did you have any other questions on anything else?
Councilmember Spencer has a question.
I've got a quick question on the equal pay. Is that going to be publicized in the newsletter, or how are we doing that?
We will, now that we're ready to roll and work out the kinks, all ways that we have of advertising, we will. It's very easy. The only glitch is if someone doesn't have they have to be here a year, they have to have a good payment record. And if they meet that, then we'll get in there, and then they agree to, this is one that's very easy to sign up online. So we just email back and say your rate would be, do you accept it? And it will change, $360 with your July bill.
Okay, any questions from the council? All right, I'm open to taking a motion from someone might like to make it.
So moved.
So it's a resolution.
That's a resolution.
I'll make.
Sorry, before we do, Richard, I was thinking a little bit more about my question earlier. How can we get this out there? I'm wondering if you or Brandon might be open to doing a chat with a bureaucrat session on our Facebook page or something like that. And now, granted, our budget is close to 300 pages or something like that, so I'm not expecting you to be able to cover all of that in a 1-hour session. But maybe if if we were to publish this presentation and just see what questions people from the public, because this kind of focuses on what's changed this year versus, starting with a baseline. But would you guys be open to doing something like that over the next couple weeks?
Given that Brandon hasn't had his annual evaluation, I'm sure he and I would love to do it.
Okay.
Councilmember Spencer.
So I do have a question on some of the fees on the youth sports, Carl. Can I meet with you and go over how we figured these things out? Because I don't agree with some of them, so I'll get with you. Thanks.
All right, so I would like to move that the City Council by resolution tentatively adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 tentative budget and set a public hearing to adopt the final budget on May 22nd, 2018 at 6 p.m.
Seconded.
Okay, we'll start with Councilmember Seastrand.
Aye.
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 Okay, the resolution passes. Thank you, Richard and Brandon. Appreciate it. Any communication items, Jamie?
Yeah, Mayor, just Just a couple of things to follow up on. We talked a little bit about in the work meeting on cemetery lighting, and you had some concerns relative to that lighting. What we do is and this is follow up from Chris, if there are vases and stuff like that are on the headstones, we do not touch that lighting. That stays and remains. If it is lighting that finds its way outside of the headstone footprint, then we will pull it. And what we typically do is we put whatever device is there and we stick it on the headstone so that when we mow, we don't obviously damage their lighting or damage our mowing equipment. But we do not physically remove them and, for example, discard the lights and things like that.
So go ahead.
So in the wintertime, when they're not mowing, they're fairly safe there, right?
Correct.
I saw a lot of Christmas-type trees, et cetera, lit up.
But, for example, when we begin to maintain the cemetery and we mow,
right,
then we'll pull the lights and generally place those lights or whatever, flowers or whatever, we'll place them on top of the headstone. And then in addition to that, we talked a little bit about the Our Schools Now, and the mayor said, I said, well, I think it's about 600,000, or I said, I think it's about 300,000, and the mayor said, no, it's 600,000. We were both wrong. It's $963,000.
To the city of Orem.
To the city of Orem. And so how that would work is the state is moving forward a vote to increase the gas tax 10 cents a gallon. Right. And if that were to pass, then they would take money that they are already dedicating in the general fund out of transportation and stick it towards education.
So what I was thinking of was of that 10 cents a gallon, 3 cents goes to the cities, and that amount equals the 960,000. Okay. Okay. That's great. Okay. I would move that we then adjourn to a meeting of the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I would like to call to order the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem and would suggest that we approve the minutes of the Redevelopment Agency meeting of August 8th, 2017.
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, our scheduled item is a resolution tentatively adopting the RDA tentative budget for the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem, fiscal year 2018-19 tentative budget, and Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson are our presenters.
So the RDA, as we've noted in previous years, will continue to decline. You can see on page 1 of the document, the tentative budget, our expected decline in the year. Now, I will note that interest earnings, and if we continue to have some rental revenue, I believe that's from the Sakura building. If those continue, then there's a possibility that we would maintain the revenue that we're going to see here in fiscal 18.
Could we get a status report on the Sakura building? What's happening with that?
I have no idea.
So we're on a month-to-month lease with the current restaurateur, and we continue to collect rent, and
okay.
So really nothing has happened. But we haven't extended the lease. He continues to be on a month-to-month basis.
Okay, thank you.
There's only one existing project area that continues to collect regular tax increment. All the other tax areas are collecting what we term the haircut, which is really the money to pay the existing bond. That bond, on page 17, shows the remaining term of that bond, which ends in fiscal 2023. You can go through each project area and kind of get an idea of the history behind each project area. And then the other item I wanted to note, also on page 17, there are currently no more existing participation agreements. that are ongoing anyway. This will change next year as the mall CDA begins, and so you will see a change to the RDA as part of that arrangement next year's budget. Just to give you a heads up about that. And then on the very last page, which you will see coming here in either in the May meeting or in June, the budget amendment related, and that's on page 19, related to this year's RDA. But other than that, are there any questions related to this budget?
Any questions from the council? Okay.
Carry on.
Would accept a motion to adopt the budget. Anyone?
I can do that.
Okay.
I move that we, oh, sorry. Do we need a public hearing for this?
No.
Okay.
Attorney says no.
What's that?
Our attorney says no.
Oh, okay. And this is...
We're the RDA board.
We're just tentatively adopting at this point,
Yes.
correct? Okay. I move that we tentatively adopt the RDA tentative budget for the redevelopment agency of the city of Orem fiscal year 2018-2019 tentative budget.
Second.
And by saying we, you're meaning that the RDA board, that's who we are.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Oh.
Yes.
Yep. Oh.
We also set the public hearing for the...
And for May 22nd public hearing.
Add that to the motion as well, please.
At 6:10 p.m.
Also second that.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember LeRae.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the resolution passes. I do move now to adjourn to a meeting of the Special Service Lighting District of Orem. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
You got to go faster if you want to get in on this.
I'm just trying to help.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Special Service Lighting District of the City of Orem. I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the Special Service Lighting District meeting of June 13th, 2017. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll go on to our first scheduled item, which is a resolution to tentatively adopt the Street Lighting Special Service District tentative budget for the Street Special Service Street Lighting District Agency of the City of Orem fiscal year 2018-19 tentative budget. And we will turn the time over to Richard and Brandon.
So if you turn to page 2, the first item I want to note is that's the revenue comparison. You'll note that the revenues we're budgeting for fiscal 19 are approximately the same. We continue to transfer the franchise tax funds that were originally set up that way. We continue to transfer those into this fund. If you'll turn to page 4, the biggest item of note is the removal, about the 6th line from the bottom is the light system lease. You'll note that lease is completed. So those funds, the line about 3 below that is called street lighting construction. Those funds have in essence been moved into that account and will be used for whatever purposes are needed within the street lighting district.
So did I read that the $3.25 fee will start or begin in April of next year to drop off?
Yeah.
And you have a list or a plan on how that's working as to when they adopted it, so it will drop off on that same
same order that it came on. Also, we're looking at how to fund this as you look at the size of the budget. If you take away, if you look here at this is what it takes to run it. There is still some capital needs, and down the road, these things will fail, need to be replaced. We're looking at a mechanism of funding that through a fee similar to the per door fee we had with the water reclamation sewer bill. So everyone would pay because we all benefit the same. And before April, we'll come back so we can say, hey, this is what we think is the best way to fund it. Right now, it looks like it'd be below the current 3 1/4 fee, and
so
be a permanent going forward fee.
So if that happens, then you would notify the residents of the fee dropping off and the new charge coming in place,
yeah,
so they understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Lentz.
I think you already addressed it. So I was going to ask if this was going to be a budget amendment that you'd come back to us in several months after we approve this, but it sounds like we'll have this information before we approve the final budget so that we can.
I don't think before we approve the final budget.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a budget amendment next year.
So we might have some idea, but not ready to build it right into the adopted budget.
Correct.
I asked Richard specifically to include the fact that this fee was going to start to sunset in April of 2019 so that we could let you know that we are developing a plan and will develop a proposal to prepare for that anticipated sunset and what we might do prospectively to continue to fund the ongoing maintenance and obviously electrical costs of the system. But we would anticipate bringing that to you after the turn of the calendar year.
Okay, so essentially we would need to build those costs into our budget using existing revenue streams, but we'd have to...
We kind of feel like we're comfortable through June 30th of next year. We have essentially, two operating months we have to work with, but the following year we need to develop more of a permanent solution.
I guess my concern was if there's a gap where it drops off for a couple months and then it comes back on, even if it's a lower amount instead of $3.25, maybe it's $1 or $2, whatever that ends up being.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more painful if wait, I thought this was done and now it's coming back. So.
Yeah, I mean we could do it. We could amend the budget.
Yeah.
At the time, for example, April of 2019, and maintain some sort of fee. It's kind of at your discretion, but we could do it either way.
My hope would be have it so that they don't see a gap.
Mm-hmm.
Which they,
that should be easy to do.
Else in, sail on.
I would imagine we'd probably label the fee differently. So one would be a capital fee, the current fee that we have in place, and then we'd be looking for more of an operations fee.
Yeah.
Right. Councilmember Spencer.
So can you refresh my memory on the lights that we purchased, that they didn't have the street lights, or they had the highway lights in their neighborhoods? Yes. So how is that? Does that have anything to do with this?
Yes. So Chris can speak to that. We actually do have a plan in place. While certain neighborhoods are dropping off, we're continuing to receive revenue for those neighborhoods that haven't, and it's that money we will use to continue with the replacement of the old lights and put in our standard residential or commercial street light.
And do we have a plan of what neighborhoods are going to be done first, or do we know?
Yes, they've identified neighborhoods.
The first area that we're looking at, as you may recall, is the State Street corridor from Center Street to the south to Provo. And we were able to utilize some RDA funds, revenues from this last year, and planning for this in this year's budget. And our engineering staff is currently in the process of designing that from Center Street on State Street from Center to the Provo border. And then we also have, I believe, 4 other lighting district areas that have been targeted. In our last work session, Mayor Brunst recommended that we consider an additional one or change one of those out. And so we will be doing that in the next, over the course of the next several months. We should get a good portion of them done, though, in the next year.
Good, thank you.
All right, one more thought.
Councilmember Lentz.
Would there be a portion of that operations and maintenance fee that is stashing away just a little bit for capital replacement several years down the road?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, the last thing I wanted to note is on page 6, the very last page, the transfer from the street lighting fund to cover, in essence, transfers it back to the city, required obviously by a recent law here a few years ago, indicating that we needed to indicate that
we're paying.
They have to charge the city for use of its own street lights, and then we send the money back.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts from the council? Okay.
Ready for a motion?
Sure.
I move that we tentatively adopt the street.
The SSLD board.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that. Hold on.
Okay.
Tentatively adopt the street lighting service district for the SSLD agency of the city of Orem for fiscal year 2018 to 2019, and that we set a public hearing to adopt the final budget on May 22nd, 2018 at 6:20 p.m.
I'll second that. We'll start with Councilmember Seastrand.
Aye.
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 Okay, the resolution passes. No further comments. I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.